The elevator doors closed with a soft metallic sigh, and the weight of the moment settled on my chest as I realized how thin the line was between professionalism and vulnerability when you're far from home and exhausted enough to accept what you never imagined you would. That night, standing in a dim hotel hallway in a small Ohio town during a sudden snowstorm, I wondered how many people before me had faced a choice like this and convinced themselves it was harmless. If this were you, tired after a 12-hour workday, stuck in a city you didn't know, with flights canceled and no rooms left anywhere else, would you have made the same decision I did, or would you have walked back into the cold just to protect your pride? I was 28, a junior project analyst from Michigan, trying to prove I deserved my place in a fast-growing construction firm based in Chicago. My boss, Andrew, was 10 years older, respected, steady, the kind of man people trusted with deadlines and secrets. We had flown to Ohio for a site inspection that turned into chaos when the weather collapsed and stranded half the city. The hotel lobby buzzed with anger and exhaustion, and when the clerk explained there was only one room left, something in me clenched. I told myself it was temporary, just one night, just sleep. Adults made rational decisions, didn't they? But rational decisions can still bruise the heart. The room smelled faintly of detergent and old carpet, and the silence felt heavier than any argument. I kept my coat on longer than necessary, pretending to scroll through emails while my thoughts raced. Andrew sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples, looking less like my boss and more like a man carrying too much responsibility. In that quiet space, power felt irrelevant and humanity unavoidable. I thought about my mother back home, who had raised me with faith and caution, teaching me that boundaries were a form of self-respect. I wondered what she would say if she could see me now, negotiating my morals with fatigue. Sleep came in fragments. I lay awake listening to the hum of the heater, feeling the distance between us measured not in feet but in restraint. Nothing happened that night that would make headlines, yet something shifted inside me. Sometimes the most significant changes are silent, marked not by action but by realization. I realized how easily loneliness can disguise itself as understanding, how quickly comfort can feel like connection. When morning came, we spoke politely, professionally, and left the room as if it had never held us. But I carried it with me like a secret folded into my pocket. Back in Chicago, work continued as if nothing unusual had occurred. Meetings, deadlines, emails, all flowing with familiar urgency. Andrew treated me the same, respectful and distant, yet I noticed small things, like how he lingered when assigning tasks or how his eyes softened when he asked if I was managing the workload. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself not everything had to mean something, but life has a way of testing the stories we tell ourselves. A month later, my father fell ill. A sudden heart attack pulled me back to Michigan, back to the house where faith lived in worn Bibles and quiet prayers. I sat by his hospital bed watching the rise and fall of his chest, thinking about fragility and forgiveness. Andrew sent a simple message offering support and flexibility, and in that moment, it mattered more than he knew. When my father recovered slowly, I returned to work changed, softer, more aware of how easily life can turn. The company hit a rough patch that year. Projects were delayed, budgets cut, and layoffs whispered about in hallways. Stress carved lines into Andrew's face, and one evening, long after most people had left, he confided in me about his divorce, about nights spent alone in a house that echoed. He didn't ask for sympathy, but it rose naturally, because pain recognizes pain. I thought again about that hotel room and realized it had been a mirror, reflecting not desire but shared exhaustion. Over time, our relationship transformed, not into something scandalous, but into something quietly supportive. He mentored me with sincerity, pushing me to speak up in meetings, to claim my ideas. I grew bolder, more confident, earning promotions I once thought were out of reach. The memory of that night became less about tension and more about a turning point, the moment I learned that adulthood isn't about pretending you're unaffected, but about choosing integrity even when no one is watching. Years later, when Andrew announced he was leaving the company to start something new, He thanked me in a farewell email for reminding him that kindness can exist in professional spaces without crossing lines. I read it twice, tears blurring the screen, understanding finally what that night had given us both. Not a secret to hide, but a lesson to carry. If you've ever been in a situation where the world narrowed to an uncomfortable choice, where doing the right thing felt heavier than doing the easy thing, you know how these moments linger. They shape who we become. As I look back now, settled into a life built on patience and faith, I see that one room, one night, didn't define me by what almost happened, but by what didn't. It taught me that respect is a quiet strength, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply hold your ground. Before the story ends, I want to ask you something from the heart. If you've ever faced a moment like this, or felt torn between comfort and conscience, share your thoughts in the comments because someone out there might need to know they're not alone. And if this story truly touched your heart, gently reminding you of the power of boundaries, compassion, and second chances, please consider liking, commenting, sharing it with someone who needs hope tonight, and subscribing for more stories that speak to the quiet corners of the human soul.